Let's begin with a truth no one wants to say out loud. You're a construct. Your personality, your preferences, your fears, your goals. Most of it isn't you. It's a reflection, pieced together from 1,000 outside influences. Family, culture, religion, school, trauma. Each one carved a shape into your psyche, until what remained wasn't you, but a version of you that could survive. And the tragedy? You started believing that version was real. You said, I'm shy, I'm logical, I'm not creative, I'm anxious, I'm a people pleaser, I'm not enough. But what if every single one of those I am statements was just a story you inherited, not a truth you chose? This is where the forgotten science of self-awareness begins. Because real self-awareness isn't about knowing your personality type. It's not about taking a quiz or memorizing astrology placements. It's about one thing: radical internal observation. The kind that strips everything down to silence and makes you ask, who am I beneath all this noise? In ancient systems, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, early Vedic science, there was no self without scrutiny, no identity without deconstruction. They believed that before you could claim power, you had to dismantle the illusion of self built by the world around you. Because the ego loves comfort. It thrives on predictability. It wants to be someone. But your essence, it doesn't care who you think you are. It only cares about what's real. And the first step toward real? Admitting you're not who you think you are. Not yet. Let's get blunt. Most of what you call your identity is just your nervous system's adaptation to avoid rejection, abandonment, and pain. Let that sink in. The version of you that shows up in relationships, trained by childhood patterns, the one that stays quiet at work, shaped by early authority dynamics, the one chasing success like a ghost, programmed by a culture that linked your worth to your productivity. You didn't choose these traits. You absorbed them, you modeled them, you survived by them. But over time, what was once a defense became a personality, a mask worn so long it fused to your face. This is what the ancients called the false self, a psychic architecture built on fear, obedience, and reward conditioning. Not evil, not malicious, just incomplete. Because here's the kicker: the false self isn't you. It's who you had to become when your environment couldn't hold your truth. You learned to please instead of express, to analyze instead of feel, to achieve instead of rest, to conform instead of question. And now, you wear that adaptation like armor. But it's heavy, isn't it? You can feel it in the moments of stillness, when the distractions fade, when there's no one to impress, when the noise quiets and something inside whispers, this isn't who I really am. That whisper? That's your original self, the part of you that existed before the world got its hands on you, the part that doesn't need validation to speak, the part that remembers what you loved before survival became the mission, the part that's wild, unfiltered, intuitive, and buried. Ancient traditions knew this. In Egypt, they called it the Ka, the soul's true essence. In Hindu Vedanta, it was the Atman, the self beyond ego and illusion. In Gnostic teachings, it was the divine spark, the piece of the source buried beneath layers of forgetfulness. These systems didn't try to fix the false self. They tried to burn it off through ritual, reflection, and rupture. Because the goal wasn't to become better, it was to become real. So ask yourself, if your entire identity was built for survival, how much of your life right now is still built on that same architecture? Let's bring it to now. Not ancient temples, but TikTok. Not dusty scrolls, but your algorithm. Because the false self didn't stop forming in childhood. It's being fed daily. Likes, comments, followers, algorithms. These aren't just numbers, they're behavioral engineers. Each time you post something and it gets validation, your brain logs it as, this version of me is acceptable. This tone is safe. This thought equals approval. You refine your voice, you edit your personality, you filter your face until you've built a digital identity that fits the mold, and then you start performing that identity in real life. Now zoom out. At work, you're the professional. Online, the polished persona. With family, maybe the quiet one. With friends, the funny one. But where's the real one? The real one doesn't market well, it doesn't trend, it doesn't guarantee belonging. So what do? We numb it with productivity, with performance, with perfectionism. And the self-awareness industry, it plays right into this trap. You're told to find yourself by buying more books, doing more inner work, downloading more tools. But no one tells you the truth. You don't need more layers, you need to start shedding them. Because the real you, it's not hidden in a course, it's beneath the roles. And every time you quiet the noise, every time you feel without filtering, speak without scripting, choose without pleasing, you remember. That's what this video is for. not to give you more answers, but to help you see the costume you didn't know you were wearing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So here's the pivot point. Are you ready to stop performing for the world and start meeting the version of you that existed before the world told you who to be? Because the rest of this journey won't be easy. It's not curated or cute. It's messy, it's raw, it's honest, and it might be the first thing that actually frees you. Yeah. If this hit something inside you, subscribe now and hit the bell. Not for me, for you. So the next time your false self gets loud, you've got a reminder that something deeper still lives beneath it. Let's go even deeper, past the mind, into the body, because your nervous system isn't just reacting to danger. It's building your identity based on what feels safe. Here's what that means. When you were a child and cried too much and were ignored, your nervous system learned. Expressing emotion equals danger. So it shut down your vulnerability. When you were punished for questioning authority, your nervous system learned obedience equals survival. So it muted your critical thinking. When your sensitivity was mocked, or your creativity dismissed, or your silence mistaken for weakness, your nervous system coded those experiences into behavior, not just once, again and again, until those responses hardened into personality traits. And now, you call them just the way I am. But they're not. They're your nervous system's way of managing a world that couldn't see you. So you started hiding from yourself. This is the science no one talks about in self-awareness, that who you think you are is literally stored in your neurobiology. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Each of these responses doesn't just alter your behavior, they construct a version of you who can survive in specific environments. But here's the problem. You're no longer in those environments, yet the programming remains. You still overthink like you'll be punished, still perform like love has to be earned, still shrink when truth wants to erupt from your throat, because the pattern wasn't just emotional, it became somatic, and the only way to meet the real you is to unfreeze the parts of you trapped in the old version. Ancient mystics knew this long before neuroscience. They practiced breathwork, not just for calmness, but to unlock buried selves stored in the body. They used vibration, rhythm, trance states to break free of the ego's grip and let the deeper essence rise through the static. They didn't ask, "What's your trauma?" They asked, "Where is it hiding in your posture, your breath, your tone, your habits?" Because once you find where your true self is being held hostage, you can start releasing it. And here's what happens when you do. You feel emotion return, raw, unapologetic. You speak without rehearsing. You rest without guilt. You say no without justification. You walk into a room without shrinking, not because you learned to be confident, but because the version of you who was born confident finally got the chance to step forward. And that version, it's not new, it's ancient, it's original, it's you before adaptation. Let's be real. Shedding the false self isn't an aesthetic journey. It's not poetic. It's not Instagrammable. It's brutal, because every piece of your personality has been rewarded by someone. Every mask you wear once earned you love, approval, money, safety. So what happens when you start peeling it off? You lose comfort, you lose people, you lose the identity that made you feel known. And that's terrifying, until you realize what you're actually losing isn't you. It's just what you became to survive. So how do you begin? You get quiet, painfully quiet, not for aesthetics, but to hear the voice you buried beneath noise, validation, and algorithms. You stop consuming. Stop trying to fix yourself with new techniques, new books, new trends. You sit and you watch. You become a forensic investigator of your own reactions. Why did I laugh just now? Why did I say yes when I meant no? Why do I avoid being alone? And every answer takes you closer to the split, the self that's been performing and the one who's been watching. That watcher, that's the real you, unconcerned with identity, free from narrative, silent, strong, still. And it doesn't need to be liked, only remembered. This is what the ancients meant when they said, know thyself. Not your goals, not your Enneagram type, not your job title, your essence, the thing that existed before trauma twisted your behavior, before the world carved you into shape, before you were told who you were supposed to be. Because once you touch that space, you begin to move differently. You don't force alignment, you follow resonance. You don't seek purpose, you embody it just by existing. You don't overthink your next step. You listen for what your nervous system has been screaming for decades. I'm tired of pretending, let me out. And yes, people will leave. But the ones who stay, they'll meet the real you. And that version, it doesn't need fixing. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It just needs to be felt, fully, fiercely, finally. Let's go all the way now, because the final illusion isn't that you're flawed, it's that you were ever separate from the truth. See, when you were born, you didn't need identity. You didn't need to be anything. You existed in full presence. No self-image, no roles, just awareness, raw and unfiltered. And that awareness, it's still there, buried under decades of programming. Programming that said, be smart, be nice, be strong, be quiet, be successful, be spiritual, be somebody. But all of it was a costume. And now, that costume is suffocating you. You know it. You feel it in the way your voice trembles when you tell the truth. You feel it in the exhaustion of always managing perception. You feel it in the silence between accomplishments, where nothing ever feels enough. So here's the hardest truth. You will never find yourself in the mirror of the world. You will only find reflections of your conditioning. The real you, it can't be seen, only experienced, not as a thought, not as an identity, but as consciousness itself, awake, alive, undefined. This is what ancient mystics called the self beyond self. The I am that exists before any adjective. It has no story, no trauma, no title, just presence. And every time you return to it, through breath, through silence, through honesty, the illusion weakens, the fear fades, the mask loosens, the ego panics, but the soul rises. And in that space you realize, you were never here to become someone. You were here to remember you were already whole. Because when you drop every label, when you stop chasing healing like it's somewhere outside of you, you finally come home, not to the person you thought you were, but to the awareness that was always watching. And that awareness, it's not broken, it's not wounded, it's not lacking, it's eternal. Now it's your move. So here's the final question. If you weren't allowed to describe yourself using roles, emotions, or past experiences, what would you say you are? Leave your answer in the comments. Someone else might find themselves in your words. And don't stop here. The next video isn't just content, it's the next door. You're not lost, you're waking up. Keep going.